What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Binge Empire, part of the Bingetown TV podcast network. This episode is Spartacus, House of Ashur, episode 4, Blood and Bone. I am your host, I guess, for today. My name is Kyle. I am joined by Paul, aka Paulicus, and Luke has returned. Luciatus is back in the Ludus, let's say, to talk about episode 4 of House of Ashur. And before we get into the episode itself, just some recommendations for you as our listeners or potentially as our watchers. The best way to support us if you've been enjoying the coverage is to like and subscribe on whatever you are listening or watching on. And then the second thing is going to be, if you would like to join the conversation more, I'm just going to do it at the top here, talk about the Discord. So Bingetown TV has our own Discord. The link will be in the description any way that you are consuming this current content. And we're just there talking about Spartacus, we're talking about Pluribus over on Apple TV, we're talking about Fallout that's coming out this week on Amazon Prime, and everything in between. We know January is a big month for TV as well, so this is a perfect time to get into the Discord and just start talking to like-minded people about all the TV that you love. And then the second thing I'll say before we actually start talking about Spartacus is that this episode and all of our podcast episodes are always going to carry the same TVMA content warnings that the Spartacus episodes themselves have. So, sex, gore, cursing, all of the above. We're probably going to get into all of that. Obviously not at the level that the show does. You know, we couldn't possibly touch that. But that's just, we're going to have some conversations along those lines that may be a little bit more raunchy than your everyday day-to-day conversation. And with that, all of that stuff out of the way, excited. Honestly, this might be the most excited I've been for a recording yet. But Luke, you missed episode 3. Just want to give you the mic real quick to talk about that if you'd like.
Yeah, I'll keep it very quick here because I also am excited to talk about episode 4. I think it was worked out that I missed the last episode because I think that was probably the low point of the season. Nothing crazy happened. A couple of things that I wanted to just call out, though, that you guys, I know you talked about and everything, but happy that she switched to the main character stance. Like, let's get that, check that off the list because we knew that was coming. And then I had a full turnaround on Chorus after episode 3. So maybe that was the best silver lining of episode 3 for me was him. It was kind of a crossroads of, am I really going to like and latch onto this Doctor as a good character, or is he going to go the other way? And I ended up walking away from this episode loving him. So that was probably his best episode. If we still did MVP, LVP, he would have been my MVP. And then the last thing I'll say is that for some reason, call me an asshole, but when Ashur fights, dude, it gets me hype when he's fighting because he's just a representation of the old Brotherhood, the one that we knew. And it's just awesome that he can still just whoop anybody's ass. And I just love when they showcase that. But that's all I'll say. I'm ready to talk about episode 4.
Yeah, episode 4, if you thought episode 3 was maybe the low point, this, and then again, using the turning point as a phrase you just used, this, I feel like might be a significant turning point for the show, the series. This was just fantastic. This felt like just nostalgic OG Spartacus stuff here. I think everything was working to the absolute max in this episode. They nailed pretty much everything. So I'm really excited to talk about all of this. And our last kind of reminder, I guess, here before we actually start talking about the episode is that the way we'll cover all of this is just we're going to go back to chronological in this, but we're going to try to bucket as many scenes as possible to kind of group them into conversations so we're not spending an hour and a half, 2 hours talking about every little thing that happens. So the first kind of bucket of conversation we'll have here, I just have these scenes grouped as basically just Achillea kind of training again for the first time in this episode. And then we just have Ashur getting the promising message. So this is all going to include the initial 3v1 fight between Achillea, Tarchon, Erato, and Ephesius. Wow, I just did that off the top of my head. I'm a little bit proud of myself. You have Ashur taking a piss, which was hilarious. And then it's just Ashur and Halara having a conversation kind of about Crassus and the message they just received.
Yeah, I was laughing. I was like, why is there always piss? Why is there always just got to be piss in at least episode here and there? But like Luke said, this was the we got the turn for Achillea at the very end of last episode, but this is where we get to see her drive and like determination. And she's not killing it off the bat, but she's obviously, you can see the change. And listening to Calidus as a Doctore, like he's obviously leaning into, and he says it later, being the doctor for the house. He's doing whatever for the glory of the house to elevate them. So, he's just doing his duty, giving instruction to whoever. And freaking Tarkhan, dude, he won't shut up. And and you want to root for him because the show is making us like him, and he's giving us all these different angles from him. But I think this is what he needed this episode, this beginning. He's still cocky, still beating Achillea, but I love this episode because every character's trajectory almost changed or was solidified, and almost a positive way for every single one. Except maybe, Doctora at the very end, he's a little pro and a con. We'll talk about it. But right off the bat, you could see just the work that they're doing with Achillea and Tarkhan and Kelidus all in this tiny scene right here.
Yeah, they're impressing me with how well they're doing the progression of Achillea. Just because, from a real world standpoint, I feel like they know that they're probably only getting one season, and even if they're getting more than one season, they need to capture Achillea's full journey within this one season. And it's just so believable that she's not getting the power ups, if you want to, for lack of a better term, without like all the struggle, and we're getting to see that. So I think that's probably one of the best things that this episode does, is just show her growing and making sense. Like, she levels up this episode, and that's like an awesome moment that we'll talk about later. But it's good to still see that she's not the Mary Sue that I'm sure some people are gonna just assume that she would have came to be for this show. So that part's great. I, as always, love talking about the inner politics of like the actual Ludus, like within the House of Ashur. So I'm so curious of your guys' take on Halara and Messiah. It's going to happen with them, because I said this 2 episodes ago. So like, for podcast purposes, like after the first and the second episode, like I'm still convinced like Halara is going to fall off a cliff and just go crazy. Whether that ends up meaning I still think there's fire for the theory that she's going to end up killing Viridia later down the line, but that seems like an end of the season goal. And now I'm shifting my sights to what the resolution for Messiah and Halara is going to be. That seems like that's going to play out sooner rather than later. And as always with Spartacus, somebody's going to die. So I'm assuming, do you guys think, is Messiah cooked? Is she not long for this world because of the jealousy that she clearly has over Ashur and Halara's love relationship?
Yeah, I mean, if it has one of the two, has to go. It's
Right.
probably going to be Messiah. I could totally see the storyline where she actually ends up killing Halara, but I just think that the show would be probably slightly worse for that.
Yeah.
I think it would make sense. They've given us the ingredients for that dish to actually make sense, but I think the show would be worse off if they went that route, because Halara seems to be just, there's more for her with actually Ashur's kind of workings and schemings and machinations, especially like you're saying with Viridia. So I would have to say Messiah, but I'll shed a tear for.
She's the warm-up kill before she works herself up to killing like a real Roman.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Halara taking her out would be pretty crazy. I actually I don't like that idea, but I also like that idea. You know what I mean?
She's such a fun character, man. I love Halara as in the show.
Halara's great, and Messi is really not doing herself any favors right now, helping her out in her stance at the house. And I mean, Halara, she actually revealed this episode that she is, what is it, Vilica? She is in charge of the house finances and stuff. So she has way more of a role than I just originally thought. I know she was important, but she's got her fingers all over this House of Ashur. And Luke, me and Kyle kind of talked on it last episode, and we were kind of agreeing with each other's sides here, but I was more on the side, I believe, that Halara truly did love Ashur as a human, and Kyle was kind of more on the fence that she cares about him because their fates are intertwined, so his success means her success. If you had to guess, would you say Halara is actually infatuated with Ashur, or just cares about her well-being?
I think she's infatuated with him. It might be some twisted result of having force love in the beginning and like just hitching her wagon to him, but I think it's grown to be more than that. Like, I think she's going to kill for him, and she's going to show jealousy and everything. I think she would do anything for him, regardless of if somebody tried to bribe her and give her power to go against Ashur. I think she would say no.
Yeah, I agree with you. Some of the ways that she looks at him, some of the things she says, and even by her actions, it seems to me that she is infatuated with him. But man, I would love that for Halara as a character. I would hate it, but if Halara does turn and she really was looking out for herself this whole time, that would be I would never see that coming, and that would be a twist that it would hurt my heart.
All right. The last thing I think I have with this is just I want to specifically call out. I mean, besides the fact that it's funny in a way, Ashur just pissing on the ground and kind of saying to Achilles, like, what are you going to lay down all day? But I think it was an interesting, almost like political move too. Because Paul, we talked on the last episode about, I spoke a lot about this, of how Ashur giving Achilles the mark was obviously going to create even more issues for him than he's already having, especially in this gladiator Lanista Dominus relationship, that they don't respect him at all. And he kind of just pretty much takes a dump on their ritual there, which he also kind of did a little bit in the original, which is why people didn't like him there. But I thought this was an interesting move to kind of show in a way that, like, it's not all going to be a cupcake run. While I'm like, I've given you the mark and I think that you've proven yourself, like, we're going to push you still. And I think because they even put in kind of a reaction shot of the boys like watching him do that and be like, oh, okay. So I just thought that was an interesting thing. We'll get on the topic of that later on because Kelidus and Achilles have a legitimate conversation about all of that. But I just thought that was an interesting little thing that they threw in.
That's funny because I clocked that moment, but it was more of me making a joke of it, saying like, oh, they're using the Gladiator chuckle soundtrack again after the Ashur piss, because he does that and all the gladiators go ha, 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 rabble, 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 rabble in the background. It's so funny every time. But you are right. I mean, that is a move kind of for the morale of the other gladiators, saying like, all right, I gave her the brother mark, but she's not just elevated on a pedestal. She's still getting the crap beat out of her. And real quick, for the Crassus stuff, that would be the most annoying thing of all time, to just get in a message being like, prepare for me. Not know when, not know exactly what's coming. That would just be so infuriating.
100%, 100%. Ashur's already on edge too. He even kind of uses this moment a little bit to kind of confide in Halara of like, man, we got all this stuff with Abaddon, and then don't even get me started on Kasudia. He likens her to Cerberus protecting the underworld, as if when he's trying to get to talk to Gabinius, while Cerberus, aka Kasudia, is in the way. And what a transition we get here into our next kind of conversation is going to be Kasudia herself. Really enjoying herself. So we got introduced to this concept in a way last episode where Apater kind of tells Dottore, that he has kind of filled that void that was left by the House of Batiatus, in that he's kind of this purveyor of the more voyeur and, maybe taboo aspects of what the Capuan, let's say, elites are into. And I love that we got right into this. Kasudia getting down and dirty, a little Southern Lord's kiss. I have a very interesting conversation about kind of the games, Ashur, and all of those things.
This whole scene almost gets rendered useless because of what happens at the end of this episode. I'm curious to have the conversation about, like, what is the payoff of all of these scenes going to end up being? Is it just going to be Chorus and Opater centric? Because all of this conversation leads to nothing. Like, if you want to try and convince me that Opater planted the seed of the Egyptian linens because he's in on the plan of the pirates attacking, like, I could believe that down the road, but I don't necessarily. There's nothing that the TV has told me besides having a history of Spartacus and like the maneuvering, the type of politics that they do. Like, I don't actually believe that's what happened, but if that is what turns out to be the truth, this is where the seed is planted. It makes the scene even more impactful, because otherwise everything that they have this conversation about calling in the favor on behalf of Ashur to ask for Gabinius to put him into the games, it gets thrown out the window because of the market scene. So yeah, we could look back as this was the seed planting of Opater being evil, or if this is just more about Chorus and Opater's relationship deeper in the season.
I definitely see what you're saying. It could just be that, one, like you said, it was just leading to the market, but it also shows Opater being loyal to Chorus, even though, the House of Ashur didn't get promoted to the games directly through Opater. End of this conversation, it is showing that he is from what we can tell, a man of his word when it comes to chorus, at least, and is following through. But like you said, if he actually led them to the market with this, enticement of, Egyptian linens, brilliant, because he's playing Kasudia like a fiddle, getting the go down gladiator up here just to phase her out and get her confused while actually, planning the inception idea of going to the market. But I
That feels very Spartacus-esque.
I mean, this whole scene, yeah, it was hard to tell exactly what was going on. Like we said last episode, every sentence is just moving it, the plot one way, and then the response is moving it another, and there's so much to every sentence, and I do love it. I couldn't tell if Opiter was bringing up the dead bodies to actually confront Kasudia, if it had anything to do with her, or if he was just gauging her reaction to basically like, oh, was she surprised? Which she really wasn't. She kind of played it off. And then she changes the subject to the cloth she's wearing immediately. So I don't know if Opter clocks that or if he was just, purely gossiping.
Yeah, I think that's another way that this scene could be, I guess, like worthwhile, if you want to use that kind of term, is that I kind of was of a mind. I think the second time I watched it, that it feels very obvious the way that she shifts the conversation. Could that be because we know for sure? Oppeter kind of said last episode to Dottore, he's like, I honestly prefer listening because when other people talk, they are usually, liable to reveal some secrets or say something that maybe they didn't want to. And I think that he was just kind of testing to see what her reaction would be to all of that. I feel like he is definitely a like worthy intellectual opponent in like scheming and things like that. I definitely didn't clock that he could have been involved in the Cilician pirate thing. I kind of love that. I had a little bit of a different idea about that, which we can talk about when we get to that scene itself. But yeah, I still think like we're getting in and a look at their relationship as each other. I mean, Kasudia, again, I think we talked a lot about this in the original coverage of like everyone in the show always has an agenda, especially the Romans. Like the Roman way, I think Luke's mentioned it too, of they just lie through their teeth and a smile to everyone as long as it benefits them. And like, is their relationship like this where they're both saying like to each other's face, like, oh my God, like I would move mountains to like make sure our, sights are aligned. But when they're away from them, it's like, fuck that guy. Like he's such an asshole, So like they have a relationship that's well established that they show us in this scene. So we'll just have to, I guess, see how that kind of progresses in the future. I did think it was interesting that she says to him, man, like you're usually on top of stuff, but I think you've miscalculated here with this whole House of Ashur stuff. And she's kind of both right and wrong in a way, because we know that Ashur is just doing this to, get a place in the games, and he doesn't care about Opiter, and he thinks Dottore hates this. But as we'll talk about later on, there actually might be some in here for Opiter. So we'll just see how all that plays out.
Yeah. The music change was awesome when Opter brings that up. Like, I was wondering if the House of Ashur could get into the games, and I was like, duh. And then Kasudia just looks pissed immediately. And last thing for this scene, I'm starting to love Opter, man. As soon as Kasudia was like, oh yeah, Dottore, I just heard that he was really injured. I don't even know if he's going to be able to keep up anymore. And the look of concern on his face, and was like, I need to go see him immediately. I'm like, dude, I'm shipping these two above anybody right now.
That's also another really important point to call out, that it caused him directly to go to the House of Ashur because of the scene.
Yeah.
But yeah, Opiter, he went up my ranks too after this episode. He started growing me as a character.
For sure. I mean, we can get right into the next kind of buckets of scenes here, because he's heavily involved, and it was great Operator stuff. So I just had this kind of tagged as Dottore recovery. So Ashur and Dottore have a very quick conversation. I only put it in the notes because he just like says like, oh, news to harden cock. And I was like, it's so crazy to talk like that, but they're just broing down. It's all good. But the big part of this is Opiter and Dottore have a little bath time. Great conversation. We get a payoff. I didn't think we would get this quick of a payoff of them hanging out last episode. So pretty interesting stuff here. I knew it. I knew this was going to happen. We
Yep.
talked about it last episode. The whole time in episode 3, I was sitting there like, all right, they're going to kiss. Like, are they going to kiss in this scene? And then they got in the bath, and then he starts tending his wounds, and I'm like, there's no way they don't kiss. And they did.
Let me ask you a question then. Is Doctore's priorities, if I had to say like his main 3 priorities right now for what we have for him, obviously far and away number 1 is the gladiators. Like he cares about them. That's his number 1 thing, and bringing glory to them. Is number 2 now his love for Opiter, and then number 3 would be out his loyalty to Ashur? Or is it still he's in a predicament where he would probably still pick his loyalty to his house, even though he is a free man? But like, does he strike you as the type of guy that would go against Ashur if there was a situation where it was pick Ashur or Opiter right in front of him and the gladiators had no impact?
I think in this moment, he would still be for the House of Ashur because Ashur kind of says what he said at the end of this episode, where he's like, no, you don't need to worry about that anymore. And I think the fact that was kind of like one of those things where you flip a coin, and like once you realize like, oh, I kind of want one of these outcomes instead of not really caring before. I think that's kind of what went through his head a little bit of like, oh, wow, I feel some type of way about this now, and I didn't really realize I did. But I still think he would ride for the House of Ashur.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that'll change.
No, it's a good question because like Kyle said, he was doing his duty for the House of Ashur, but he was getting, some enjoyment out of it in the meantime. But now that his duty changes, will that, enjoyment actually shift his mindset? That's a really good question. And I don't know. And to be honest, I didn't know if Chorus was actually down for Opiter after this episode. I couldn't really tell, like the way he's like shy, the way he's not really making advancements. Opiter's the one doing everything. I couldn't tell if he was really just playing him for the house. So when Opiter does put his hand on his face and he like grabs it and starts kissing it, I was like, oh my God, I hadn't like, hell yeah. Like this is, I thought he was being put in a situation he didn't want to be. And then it turns out that he's, like I said, doing his duty and getting some enjoyment out of it too. So I loved it. Emily walked in right as he's kissing, and she knows him from Graham McTavish from Outlander. And she was like, Dougal, what are you doing? This is crazy. But even
they're a great ship.
Definitely. And like the build up to it was great with Ashur basically saying to Opiter, oh yeah, Doctori's fine, I gotta go, but you stay. You stay. And Halar's like smirking the whole time because even she knows that, Chorus is into it. And what I was saying last episode, saying it without saying it, Chorus is in the bath and Opiter's like, oh, are you in this bath a lot? Like, oh, Ashur must be like a very like happy man. And Chorus has to say like, no, I'm not doing sexual favors with Ashur. This is purely just a discussion of house dealings and other thing. That's the reason we're in the bath. So the way they tiptoe around everything, is brilliant.
Opiter has some great lines here too. He's got game.
Yeah.
If I swung that direction and I was in that situation, I probably would have been, throwing little kisses out too. Because when he says, it's a rare privilege for a mere mortal to touch the heavens. It's like, damn, bro, you make me blush over here. And then he follows that up basically with, next time you find yourself in need, part lips and I will storm Olympus to see you satisfied.
Hell yeah.
Like, Jesus.
And I love the line a little right before that too, when Chorus brings up the games and Opiter's like, dude, that's twice you brought up the games and 2 times of hanging out with me. Are you just using me, or you actually care about my company? And Doctore is like, I'm Doctore. Like, glory in the arena comes to fucking mind. Like, I'm sorry about it. And then I love the line that Opter says, which, we all must play our part in this game of men and their ambitions, because that's really what this whole show feels like, is ambitious men, people being their pawns in a game, and all of a sudden the pawn makes a move and he's higher up. So I loved this conversation.
Yeah, it was just fantastic. And again, just that reminder of even Opiter is aware too. I thought it was interesting where he almost kind of separates himself from people like that, even though he himself could be considered like, a man of ambition and an elite in a way. So that was just an interesting way to kind of put that. in this conversation, but also he's trying to get laid. So you're going to say what you're going to say to
Yeah.
try and get laid. And yeah, I just think this is, Luke, right what you're saying. Dottore is going to find himself in quite the position, it seems like, in the future. It's going to be that classic, human heart and conflict with himself. It's, can he have, the gladiators and the glory and the success with the House of Ashur and Apater and that love aspect? The answer is very likely going to be no. So it's going to be pretty interesting to watch him deal with that and see how all of that goes. We can move on very quickly to pretty much a short scene here, but I just feel like it needs to have a little bit of a conversation if necessary. Ashur and Hilar leave Apater and Dottore at the villa, and they just go to the market. And now we learn here, like Paul already mentioned, that Hilara has a legitimate title. She is the villa's villica, so she's kind of in charge of all the finances and all of kind of like the slave labor around just keeping the house fed and all of those things. And then the big part of this is just the demonstration that they stumble upon with the House of Proculus. We get Ammonius is kind of beating up some random guy, and then a confrontation that Ashur completely creates himself with the brothers Ferrex that does not go the way that he would like it to.
This type of scene just reminds you that, like, pretty much everybody's just an NPC in the Roman times, of just in the crowd. They just do whatever whoever's the loudest like says, and they just, well, yeah, F that guy, throw, like they just do whatever. And like Ashur's just manly enough, he just stands up and just throws himself into, because nobody does that. But yeah, it was a fun scene. This kind of reminded me of just like a Game of Thrones-esque scene of just how they get away with telling stories in the markets of things. But it's a pretty quick scene. Yeah, it's pretty much all I had on this.
Yeah, not a whole lot. I just thought that it was funny that this was basically a marketing scheme for both of the houses. They were just like, hey, House Proculus has got to be known within the people. So get out there, put on a little PR stunt, fake fight whoever wants to fight you. And Proculus is like, all right, fine, brings all the gladiators out there. And then same with Ashur. He is hyping up this idea of this new exciting gladiator that he's found. He never said he or she, so obviously he's kind of keeping that part a secret, because I feel like if that came out, he would just be laughed before the games even came about. But I was a little upset with Ashur because I liked what he was doing, but then he just kind of fell apart and started bickering and fighting more than, protecting the house name. And that led to his downfall, of course, which, why stand there and take all that food? Just turn around and get out of there.
I think it was funny that it was almost like a freestyle rap battle in a way, where it was just like, I throw a line out and then the crowd was like, ooh.
Yeah.
And then the brothers Ferrex returned a line and then everyone was like, ooh. It was just funny how they got into that back and forth. And the one thing I was thinking, Ashur, I think, is just dying to kill them himself. I feel like what do you think the outcome of that is, that 1v3? I feel like Ashur would win, because I feel like they totally would have lost in episode 1 if, and I even forget the guy's name, like wasn't like a total inexperienced rookie in the arena.
Logus?
So I just can't help but think, Logus, thank you. I can't help but think that Ashur would totally kill all 3 of these guys in the arena.
You're talking about the brother Ferrex?
Yes, the brothers Ferrex.
Brothers Ferrex, yeah. It's kind of tough. If you were to give me Ashur like in his gladiator prime, like I for sure think he tears them up. He's a little out of shape. I'm sure he's not training as much, but I still think, why not? Like I really would put my money on him if you were give me the odds, whatever it was. If he was the slight favorite, if he was a huge underdog, I'd bet on the Ashur side, just because he was fighting legends and he was still able to like stand, like literal legends that every single one of the people from season 1 of Spartacus the weakest of them would tear up the best of who we have now. So I really think he falls into that weakest category, but still stronger than the majority of people. So I think he would beat the brothers.
Yeah, I mean, I saw the end of the episode. I see that Ashur still got it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that like he was, 2-on-1, 3-on-1. I would say the brothers Ferrex would probably be a little bit more difficult because, as Kelidus says, they think as one. But I agree that Ashur shows that he's definitely still got it.
I think that probably pisses him off even more too, because he can't.
Yeah.
I think he would love to just throw down and be like, all right, like you three versus me, like literally right now, like grab steel and let's just settle this. But he can't do that. And that probably eats at him for sure. All right. So, Paul, honestly, you just teed us up pretty perfectly now for this next group of scenes. I just have it titled as Dinner Time at the Ludus. The first big part of this is going to be that Kelladus and Achillea conversation. Ashur comes in later and kind of tosses tables, and then him and Doctore have a fantastic interaction, which I'm excited to talk about. But Kelladus is doing his thing as kind of the temporary Doctore and having this conversation with Achillea, and it just sets up some great things for the rest of the episode too. So I'm really glad we got this scene.
Kelladus is just, every time he's on screen, he's more and more likable, which is usually a red flag in this show. But I actually think that he feels safe because I don't anticipate him getting picked for the games. Just because he's past his prime, it's more likely to give it to his son Tarkon. I'm scared for him, but I actually don't think he's as at much of a risk as some of the other gladiators because he's also acting Doctore right now. I just don't think they're going to send him into the games, but he's just fantastic in every conversation that he has with the other gladiators, and that's no different here when he tells Achillea exactly what she needs to hear. She doesn't listen initially, and she eventually does, but it's just a good conversation.
Yeah, and he straight up says, like, one of those guys is just fueled by hubris and angst, and he's gonna jump first, take him out. And she's like, "You talking about your son?" And he's like, "Who else am I talking about? Like, of course I'm talking about Tarkon." So I love that. And then I loved Ashur just coming back and just taking out all of his anger on the gladiators. And then when he finds Doctore, the quote is so funny where he's like, "Break good words towards mind of Opter so that I may ram them up Proculus's ass." It's just so good.
Dude, Nick Taraby, he was on one this episode specifically. There's some line reads in this episode that are just like all-time Spartacus line reads. He is just unbelievable. I know people were like, Ashur, like how you gonna make a show about Ashur? But like him,
Yeah.
Nick Taraby as an actor is the reason why you can make a show about Ashur, because he is just so fantastic.
And for what it's worth, if you were going to tell me you were making a spinoff and doing something like this, Ashur would be on a short list of my first choice, honestly. If you allowed for the revival from death, like hell yeah. Badiatus would be my number one choice, but like Ashur's probably a close second.
The GOAT, still hanging around, still getting mentions all the time. I was going to say that, Luke, you kind of honestly touched on this a little bit, but I was thinking in this scene where Kelladus is talking to Achillea, and then also some of the Doctore stuff that happens a little bit later I feel like obviously they're kind of soft launching Kelladus as Doctore to us in a way, and I was kind of thinking, like, does that make him more or less likely to die? And I'm kind of leaning towards less likely, although it would it would probably be even more emotionally impactful now that he like creates this relationship with Achillea and he's like kind of training her, and he's probably going to be like a big reason why she's successful, and maybe he gets snatched away and like Tarkon has to have the regret of the way that their relationship went, and you can see all of that. But current Doctore Chorus could be in for more than just being the Doctore of this house, and Kelladus could step into that role, and I feel like it's more likely that he survives now.
Yeah, does stand by that too.
Yeah. Remember this conversation for the very end of the episode when we're having something.
More likely is not guaranteed.
Yes.
We shall see what happens. All right.
Question for you guys.
Go ahead, Paul.
Question for you guys.
Yeah.
So this scene, Chorus, Doctore, and Ashur are in the former champions room of House Badiatus. They're talking about how this room used to be littered with the former champions' visages and cocks, right? I can't wait to compare this scene to later on when Ashur becomes more successful, and maybe we do see one of those busts in the House of Champions or in the Room of Champions. My question for you, if Achillea becomes champion, what are they molding here? They're going to mold her face and then mold her lady bits? Or are they just going to omit that second part?
Wow. I don't
have above table question right now. Did you have that in mind? Or Are you reading that off of the shared notes that I
Oh, did you
put
have that?
into?
Oh, I'm so
Yeah,
sorry.
it's so funny. I have that
No way.
highlighted in the shared notes of if Achilles is crowned champion, will they carve her? I mean, I use the medical term her vulva into stone.
I am seeing that.
Are you
I do
serious?
see it.
I thought you were reading it off of his notes too. That's actually hilarious.
That is so fun. But how could you not think that? You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
they're begging you to ask that question. I was almost disappointed that we get like the montage, we get like the kind of cameras moving across the old visages and the lighting and like I would have died if they just
They slid it-
just slid one in. It was just a dick.
That's Spartacus. That's Crixus. Like you could tell.
Yeah, like, that would have been a 12 out of 10 episode if they slid that in there.
Whoever is in charge of sculpting the statues has probably never once been asked to do that
True.
woman, at least in this time. So I think they go full Barbie and it's just smooth.
Oh,
Yeah.
cowards. I
Yeah.
hope not. Ashur's not a coward. It's gonna be
Mhm.
something for sure. Yeah, I love this scene. It was just again because we get all of the fan service. Now we're thinking, Crixus, Scanicus, the Mad Thracian, Spartacus, and we're all hyped up. And then they get hyped up together where Doctore's like, let us show this city that we tower above all others. And it's just like, yeah, there were so many scenes like this where they get fucking jacked up about the future of the house. And then I'm just sitting there on my couch, like ready to flex and just like jump off my couch, like throw me in the arena, boss. Like I'll fucking fight for the boys.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I can't wait till the arena's rebuilt. The real
I
arena.
watched this before bed, man. I couldn't sleep. I was so hyped.
So good. And then they kind of had to come down off of this little bit of euphoria that they're having because we get a new message from Crassus, and this is just makes me laugh because he's like, all right, my stuff's getting there tomorrow night, by the way. And they even had this conversation where Hilara is like, oh, he treats you like slave, which is just kind of funny because she's a slave. So it's like, oh, he's treating you like you treat me. And Ashur's pissed about that. He's not very happy about that. The next kind of group of scenes I have here is I just have this as two beautiful people learning some lessons. So we kind of already had the Messia conversation. She confronts Hilaria here. There's really not a ton more there than what we've already talked about. So we can just really focus on the Tarchon of all of this. So we get another round of the 3v1 training for Achilea. Goes much better for her this time because of the conversation with Calidus. And then we just have Tarchon kind of just throwing a tantrum and like a little bit of a hissy fit, both to his dad and kind of a little bit to Achilea. And it's just kind of a rough, we'll call it 10-ish, maybe 5-ish minutes for Tarchon here.
Skipping all the action, it was cool. This was like the level up part that I mentioned off the top of the podcast where you get to see Achilea grow and take in some of the lessons. Just write a passage, Spartacus, main character type of stuff here. I don't even have anything to call out there, but for the Tarchon stuff, talking to his dad when they're alone, I just felt like there was a moment where if the conversation cut off 20 seconds before it actually did, they were having that heart to heart, they were coming together, and then it just turned so sour and he becomes such a little bitch and then he has to chuck him into the pool and, big dog him a little bit. But he had a moment where he could have walked away. And now because of that conversation ending so sour, I just don't see a path forward for Tarchon to not just be fodder for mid-season death here. I feel like that's coming up just because he's so full of hubris. He's not learning. He's fighting with his own dad, and obviously Achilea doesn't like him. That's just breeding like a rivalry that's going to end so poorly for him unless he has a turnaround. But I don't know. I feel like the show is doing a good job of not directly following all of the main plot twists that season 1 did. And I think that him turning and following almost like a Crixus-like path would be doing what they're proving that they're not doing. So I really think he's kind of going to die and just have like a leave a sour taste in your mouth kind of ending for his character. But maybe I'm wrong. And I hope I kind of am, because the redemption arc would be fun for him. I just don't necessarily see it right now.
Yeah. When Tarchon and Calidus are like face to face, basically towards the very end of the conversation, what you were saying, Luke, I literally wrote down like, oh, it seems like Tarchon finally got the message, but then he had that last second freak out and
had to do it. Yeah.
And I don't know if that was the nail in the coffin to make him finally get the message, or if he is that showing that he's never going to fully get the message and he's always going to stay hot-headed. personally, I couldn't tell. I was so back and forth with everything. I wanted to say that Tarkon was almost more ambitious, and he was going to be more of a like, put the blinders on. I'm going to be champion, similar to Crixus was. But I could easily see it going either way, where he's stuck in his way and he's just, throwing a tantrum there.
Didn't you think the conversation he has with Achillea later leads you to believe that he's not going to learn in a good way?
Yeah, too. In the beginning, I thought he was going up and kind of like reconciling and like making a comment. But then the end, it's like, oh my God, you guys just seem like you're complete rivals at this point, which,
Mm-hmm.
Spartacus and Crixus are rivals. Are they going to continue that, storyline of enemies to, friends? Are they going to do that? Who knows?
I just don't think they're going to copy what they were doing in season 1.
I agree. I would want them to switch it up, and I think they're doing a good job of giving us a new cast of new characters. But
Mhm.
one thing they continue to do every season is the shield jump. And right here,
Mm.
Tarkon
That's fair.
does the shield jump, and I'm like, at first reaction is the Leo DiCaprio on the couch meme. We're pointing, and obviously we're all freaking out. And then I'm like, you haven't deserved, you haven't earned that move yet. You haven't earned that move. And then Achillea actually shits on him for it. And I was like, all right, this feels like Anakin at the end of Revenge of the Sith, where Obi-Wan just has the high ground, slices him up. Like you try to move you had no business trying.
Well, he also doesn't do it right. You can't jump off someone's back. Like, you need the shield.
Mm-hmm.
The shield, and they need to help you out a little bit. Spartacus was never making it up to the balcony of the Ludus if he was just jumping off Crixus's back. Like, Crixus fucking tossed him up there. It's got to be a little bit of a combo move. Exactly.
So
yeah, you can't just jump off your boy's back when he's down like that. It don't work like that. And yeah, I agree. Calidus and Tarkon's relationship, it changed. It flip-flopped a lot within this episode, and it seems like it ends on such a sour note, even in the later scenes that we will eventually get to. And I just don't know where I land on like how things will go. I think there's so many ways it could go, which is a good thing. And I think the Crixus comparison is a little interesting because I just don't know what's the catalyst for them uniting. You know what I mean? Like, Crixus and Spartacus didn't like each other pretty much up until episode 13 of season 1, and where it's, they obviously get begrudging respect in a way, but Spartacus, it's like a buzzer beater to convince him in the finale to like join up with the squad and the plan. And obviously, freedom, rebellion, all the stuff that happened with Navia is what gets Crixus to that point. And it's just, I don't know what the catalyst would be for Tarkon. Maybe there's something to do with Ilada. They introduced us to him having a very specific romantic interest, which leads me to believe in a way too, you'll probably stick around for a little bit longer. You'll be a little bit bigger of a character. So I just don't know at all where his story could go. I thought that him having the conversation with Achillea, like Paul mentioned, was, even though it wasn't successful and he kind of becomes even more entrenched at the end of the episode, I think that in a way was almost like a evidence of growth. Like, I don't think he ever would have done that before getting big dogged by his dad. But yeah, if he does change, it's going to need to be some specific catalyst. And right now, the only thing on the menu seems to be his dad dying is going to be that catalyst, which would suck. And we just talked about how we're thinking he's safer than we originally thought. So we'll just have to see. Maybe something with Ilada could be like him doing something hot-headedly, rushing into something, impatience is going to get. But I am of mine. I want him to change and be like with Achillea and like all that stuff, even if it is a little bit of a redux. Like, I don't really care. My eyeballs will enjoy it.
Definitely.
He's handsome, so he might get the pretty boy treatment, and they save him just to feed our eyes.
He is definitely handsome. And also, I like the back and forth between him and Achillea. Achillea kind of gets the leg up on him twice within these scenes, where she kind of says, she gives him the wounded animal line that he gave her. But then also she's like, it must be tough, or it's a heavy thing living beneath shadow of noble father. And then he responds with, I live in no man's shadow. And then the absolute zinger of all zingers completely shuts him down is only a woman's then. It's just like, damn, that is the single sore spot for him. And she's so right. He currently is, even if Ashur's fast tracking her, he is living in her shadow. Okay, let us move now to, the centerpiece, the masterpiece, I would say, probably of this episode, which is going to be the market part 2. Now, scenes happen before this fight, and I'm just going to have us have an open conversation here. How much do we even want to talk about these pre-battle market related scenes?
The only thing I had is that when Asher goes to get the supplies for Crassus and he's talking to Chorus, and Chorus is like, I can't believe he's treating you like this and he's making you pay for it, one of the wealthiest men in the Republic. And Asher says, how do you think Crassus got so wealthy? He uses the coin of others. And I thought he was going to be like, that fucking bitch, or like, fuck that guy. And then he hits us with a thing to aspire to. So like, that's what Asher wants to do. He wants to be exactly like Crassus and just use others. So I thought that line was so funny.
I'm good. I don't have any commentary. I'm ready to talk about that jaw on the floor moment where the axe comes in. I did not see that coming, because even though death happens every single episode of Spartacus, it's not the most common thing to have a high Roman or a high Roman's wife in this scenario just die. Like that happens like only in the finales of the seasons, or if Badiatus is doing some sketchy scheming. Like this was so damn surprising to me. I was like, holy shit, like she just dies right away and chaos breaks loose. And you're right, like this is just the feast of the episode. It was, everything was high tension. I was on the edge of my seat. The fighting's great. The breakup of Chorus and Asher and like them even getting involved is like a great moment, which I'm sure there's a ton to talk about there. But where'd you want to take the conversation?
Oh man, I don't care where we go as long as we go there. I mean, there's a lot of fun stuff in here. One thing I'm just going to call out at the top, because I don't want it to get lost in the shuffle of us like talking about like maybe the in-universe ramifications of things, is that I think both Viridia and then Claudia Black plays Kasudia. They were unbelievable in these scenes. Just their facial expressions, the way that they like acted out the shock, I just thought was so believable. And like you said, Luke, when Horatia gets her head split and just Viridia's like the way that she acts in that moment of just like looking at it and her eyes are just as wide as possible and the shock on her face was, I just thought that they just did a really, really fantastic job of this. But then when Asher and Doctore turn that corner and Asher drops the line, like it's just, and then they get busy with it. It's just, they kind of give each other the nod and they know what's what. And Asher goes out to Viridia, Doctore goes and kind of helps Kasudia. It's just, all of it was so perfect. You would almost think that Asher planned it. I think we know that we didn't, but it is quite the situation for them to fall into.
Oh my, you nailed it. Everything about this was so great, from how they ramped up the scene from just Viridia being like, oh my God, I'm out in the market being happy for the first time, to, oh yeah, you can wear these to the games, to, oh my God. They ramped it up like that was going to be the issue of this conversation, was Viridia doesn't want to go to the games. And as Horatia, however you say it, is she's explaining it, that head split came down. I had to rewind because I was taking notes for a sec. I was like, wait, I missed something. This was crazy. How did this get to this? I never saw it coming. I thought it was perfectly executed. And yeah, you nailed it. Just the absolute horror on their faces, to cowering, in the fetal position, to maybe fighting back for a second for Kasudia. I was like, props to her for not just, taking it, rolling over and dying. But in my head, while all this chaos is going on, I'm like, wait a second. Asher and Doctoria are still here, right? They're still in the market. And then when they turn the corner, I was like, we're safe. We're safe, and it's done. It's done. Viridia and Asher are together, because there's no way that Viridia possibly marries anybody else after this. She is so just infatuated. I used that term earlier. I'll say it again. She is just enamored with Asher at this point, and it literally couldn't have gone better. If I was Gabinius, I would think Asher set this up, just because everything worked out perfectly for Asher here. The only person was Doctore at the very end, and we'll get to that.
So that's going to be the bigger conversation once we're done talking through this all. Maybe even we can just kind of do it now, I guess, because it fits the conversation we're talking about, which is the source of this conflict. There's so many options that we can put on the table. I pulled that out of my ass earlier saying Opiter. I don't actually believe that, but he's technically on the table as an option. Proculus is always an option. We know it wouldn't have been Gabinius because his family was at stake here. And then it's impossible not to have Badiatus's protege not have a chance to have been the one that kicked this all off for his own benefit. But I feel pretty firmly that based on the character reactions, like Ashur and Doctoria were going to run away until they saw them there. I really don't think that they planned this whole thing. That to me would be like a retreading of a Badiatus plan that happened very similarly in season 1, where the reveal at the end of the episode when he does a plot like this is, I set this whole thing up, of course, for him to be the hero. I think this was just a total coincidence, and it's going to work out very well for Ashur. It's going to put Doctore and Opiter in an interesting situation. Viridia is now, if she wasn't already sold on marrying Ashur, that is her path forward. And the most interesting ramification is going to come down to whatever ends up happening with Kasudia, because if she succeeded in her sketchy plan of killing Korra, she would be dead, right? Like straight up. So is she somebody that can separate what happened and actually feel some remorse? She doesn't really strike me like that. She seems like an Alithia, selfish type of character that, even though she almost caused her own death, essentially, like, I don't think this is going to make her now believe that Ashur is like truly somebody that she owes one to, even though she definitely does. Okay, so I guess the two questions, let me pass it over to you, Kyle, is one, like, who's your leading theory of what caused this? Was it just naturally pirates, or is there going to be somebody that pushed this all into play? And then two, what do you think Kasudia is going to do now that she's kind of in debt to House of Ashur?
I am going to throw out there, I think that Marcus Crassus was heavily involved in this, and that hinges for sure on the fact that, did Ashur actually tell him or not about what Gabinius told him? But I just think that I would love it if it were to be true, so that I'm just going to throw it out there. I think it's kind of, it's funny that we get the messages from Crassus that are like, I'm coming and all this stuff. And he's like kind of this looming figure over the season. But I've said this before, I'm so unbelievably interested in the background of this kind of civil war brewing between him and Pompey. And I just think it's within him for sure to do a plan like this. And I think one of the number one reasons is, so Spartacus and the gang get Crassus with a somewhat similar play, in that in season 4, they kill some of Pompey's scouts and they take the kind of necklace that they wear that was Pompey's whatever standard sigil, whatever it might be. And then they send someone to play that role as a messenger to Crassus, which then gets him to send his son to treat with Pompey. They ambush them, they capture his son. Crassus was pissed about that, but he's also someone that would be like, oh, love that move. In a vacuum, I love that move, even though it caused my son to die, but like, fair play. And because I was just like, why would they wear the like obvious necklace of it? Like, it happens in broad daylight, like Gabinius kind of calls out, like, in broad daylight, and they grow so bold, and it's obviously going to force his hand to do something. And I just wouldn't be shocked at all, honestly, whether it's even Ashur told him or just Crassus knows that Gabinius was planning this law to kind of get Pompey to stop camping his army outside of the city and actually go deal with the pirates. The pirates have been a consistent theme through all of this. So I would just love it to be a machination of Marcus Crassus in, kind of a false flag within this civil war that's brewing between him and Pompey. So that's going to be my guess.
I like it. My guess is that it straight up was a coincidence and pirates are just a problem, but it almost plays into that exact theory because it's really more about the world building politics going on in the background. Same idea, just less Crassus being involved. Your way is, if they can write it that way, that's way better.
Because Ashur's been complaining consistently of like, Crassus doesn't answer my messages. Crassus, they're obviously hurting for money. Crassus doesn't really seem to be supporting him beyond the knowledge that other people have that Crassus supports him, which affords Ashur a level of protection. But it would be really interesting if Crassus at some point, if he ever pops up and kind of says, like hint, hint, wink, wink, like, why do you think you happen to get that position in the games of the Luna Apollinaris? You know what I mean? Where it's like, I got you, dog. Like
That could
I'm out
work.
here doing
Yeah.
stuff and scheming and things like that. And we could get that information almost through Caesar, which spoiler, we get Caesar at the end of this episode. But it's feeling more towards I want that to be true, but I think there's the ingredients there to convince us, and it would still make sense. So
Yeah. So my first thought was it just coincidence that the Cilicians are walking around and they see somebody who has bodyguards and they're like, all right, we're gonna just capture them for ransom? Or was it seems a little coincidental? Or was there somebody that let them know that they are going to be in the market at this time? First thought went to Operator because he was the one that, told them about the Egyptian linens in the first place. Could be, I don't know. But I really do like the Crassus aspect, which I didn't think about, but you could be totally right. He's making this horrible event happen. So he already had Caesar en route to this location. He knew this event was going to happen. So he's sending Caesar there to quote unquote take care of it and cement his power, help the people, get the people more on Crassus's side than Pompey's. So I think that political maneuvering would be genius from him. And I like the aspect and the constant theme of, you're a quick learner, you pick up on what people use on you, relating it back to Ashur last episode saying, I don't want to use your medicus, I don't want to be in your debt, I'm a quick learner type of thing, going with Crassus and that season 4. I love that connection, and I think that would just speak to Crassus's brilliance.
I don't know how much you guys have left for this, but I wanted to call something out with the fighting itself. Was there one moment where Ashur broke a dude's neck? That was how he died, was when he flipped him over? Because that was so cool. Like he didn't slice his throat or anything, but you heard the crack, and the cinematography was a little weird, but it was that's what I thought was they were trying to show, and that was just an awesome way to get a kill there. But
he was just showing off. He was clearly just showing
of
off in
course.
front of Viridia at that point, just absolutely stunting. And then he hits her with, like, she's like, oh my gosh, like, you're hurt. And he says, I would welcome 1,000 such wounds if earning them yet saw you grace this world. It's like, all right, bro, you fucking been learning from Operator. So they were 1,000,000% about to kiss before Kasudia turns the corner and like shrieks and says like Viridia or whatever. And I love, like, they have this very emotional and it's loud, this reunion. And then Ashur and Dattore just like tandem shoulder slap, like, you fucking dog, like, hell yeah, baby. Like, we're alive, baby. Gloriously
They had
alive.
a moment in the middle of the fight where they're both like killing somebody, and then they just make eye contact and like do the nod real quick, and then they just go their separate ways and just murder their assigned men. And I was like, God, these are two forces. I feel so safe. As soon as they turned the corner, I was like, we're good, we're safe, nobody's dying.
Yeah, I agree. They're both such good fighters. It's like Badiatus would have been hiding in a corner, but Ashur gets in there, which is just such a cool difference.
Badiatus got dirty sometimes.
He does, but he waits for you to like fall on your knees and like goes behind you and pokes you with a knife.
He would have been like posing as like an afraid and then just been like,
yeah.
He got done what he had to get done. Okay. I think, yeah, you're right, though. We can just move, I think, off of this into kind of the immediate outcome, the immediate aftermath, which is just that Ashur and Dattore kind of escort Kasudia and Viridia back home here. And Gabinius and Ashur just have this conversation. There's kind of the one part being it's going to move Gabinius's own machinations and plans because of this like emotional event that's happened, but also it's obviously moving Ashur's own plans forward. And this is, like you mentioned, Paul, this is where they have that great scene where they're kind of like, well, okay, I don't want to be in debt to you. Well, it's like, well, I don't want to be in debt to you. So they kind of like call it even, which for Ashur is like the greatest outcome in the world, because even for him is like his dreams have been met. So all of this just worked out pretty well.
Couldn't stop thinking of Toe this entire time that they're having this conversation from Wheel of Time. But I guess just because the more important conversation is those two, just give me your quick hitting answer of what you think Kasudio's path forward is for the rest of the season now that the events of this episode happened. Does she have a turn of heart? Like, is that even possible?
Exactly. Like
that would be the subversion of season 1, is making her now good, which won't happen. That just seems.
I mean, that would be brilliant writing if they somehow turn Kasudia into like a fan favorite, because will she have the emotional capacity to move on from hating Ashur, like you're saying, to gratitude for saving her and her daughter's life, or she's still gonna hate that he's a foreigner so bad, the stupid Syrian, that there's no way she would want her daughter to marry him. So I really don't know. They did a fantastic job of just putting her between a rock and a hard place here, because she either stays true to her character or has a huge shift, and I have no idea.
I think A, whatever they decide to do, Claudia Black, her actress, is going to nail it because she's been fantastic. But B, I feel like it might be she's going to soften slightly, but there's no chance that she ever flip-flops on the concept of Viridia and Ashur getting together. You know, so like that's going to be where like the new battle lines are drawn, where she's going to like reluctantly accept him getting some type of rewards, and you know, society maybe accepting him a little more, or like him working with her husband, you know, maybe she can swallow that. But bringing him into the family is no. Like, she will fight tooth and nail, she will claw, she will do whatever it takes for that not to happen, because that's the battlefield for her. Because she saw it again, this interaction in front of them where Viridia's just like, oh my gosh, like once again, like, you know, the only thing I can think is gratitude. And Ashur says something about his tongue bending towards maybe gratitude too. And it's just like, they're not blind, like they see it, you know. And I think that's going to be, that train's left the station. It's going to the next destination, which is definitely Bangtown at the House of Ashur, but she's going to try. I think that's kind of going to be what her new role is in that
Destination way. Bangtown. Love that. Yep. And like, wow. Could not start that sentence. Kasudia's dilemma and figuring out where her trajectory is going, like through the distributive property, is now like what is going to happen with Halara, right? Because we have this constant conflict of Ashur and Halara seem like they love each other. Oh, Kyle's got an idea. Ashur and Halara seem like they love each other. Ashur seems like he's, you know, all googly eyes over Viridia and would love the idea of, you know, joining houses and gaining that power. So what is his situation going to be? And I love that one character directly affects, you know, 4 characters away because of how good the writing has been.
Ooh, I think I know what you're about to say, but go. I want to see if
I think you might like it too, even if it's not, because I mean, is our strange bedfellows being created here between Halara and Kasudia?
Yep, that's exactly what I wrote down.
Anti-Ashur and Viridia's romantic relationship, because that would be something. That might be the greatest scenario I could think of, is where the two of them are scheming together, and you know, maybe they throw a party at the villa at the House of Ashur, and Kasudia, I think, is observant enough maybe in that way where she would be able to pick up on that for sure, and then be like, asset that I can use, because like I refuse to let this Viridia stuff go down. And I will laugh maniacally if it comes up, because, and I'll just get giddy because that sounds fantastic.
As Paul was talking about, I wrote the same thing down, and I totally could see that working out. It's tough because you would think that, well, I guess that lends itself to Kasudia trying to find a non-lethal way to remove Ashur from marrying her daughter, and Halara could be the way. So I'm all in. That seems like a really fun thing for us to root for as a podcast.
Yeah, agreed 100%. And it's also interesting because that could also be a way to maybe knock him down the social peg too, of like, look at this former slave that marries his slave. Like, you know, he'll never be like us. Like, that's almost like a double whammy there. That's almost 2 birds with 1 stone. So, man, maybe they should consult us for season 2. Maybe
that is good writing right there.
I like that.
Yeah, hit our line, Steven. Let us know what's up. I like that a lot.
The only other quote that I had for this was Gabinius and Ashur while they're kind of talking, and Gabinius finally brings up the games, but how he gets to it is, I and everyone with ears have heard that you have won a spot in the games pretty much. And Ash's response cracked me up. He's like, you know, thoughts have occasionally breached, such a topic. And I'm like, okay, you think about it every waking moment, Ash. You're like, way to play it cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's so good. And we had a great conversation right there about Kasudia's next steps. I'm also quite interested in Gabinius's next steps in the aftermath of this. Ashur, even, I don't know how calculated this was. It might have just been him saying this, but when he says the line, pirates grow bold absent proper response from Rome. And that kind of is just like, even if that wasn't on purpose, Gabinius has now like a complete fire lit under him of you can't put this under the rug. The Eight Isles wife literally died and was murdered in the streets of Capua during the day. So what is going to be the immediate political ramifications through what Gabinius does? Does he, turn the heat up with the Pompey Crassus stuff? All of that, I think, is just another great aspect of this show I'm looking forward to.
Like full suck up to Caesar. I could see that being his thing, where he almost is like now relative to Caesar. He is what Ashur is to him, like when it's just them two. So I could see him full sucking up to Caesar in the next episode.
Yeah, I was curious because Gabinius seems to be the mediator between Pompey and Crassus. So with the events that just happened, is he going to sway one way or another? Because obviously he's upset that his wife and daughter were attacked and almost killed here. So I don't know the history exactly either. So I don't know what will happen from that standpoint. But it seems like Gabinius is obviously going to favor whoever supports killing or knocking back the Cilicians.
Yeah, and we shall see. Paul, it's kind of funny what we randomly talked about last episode of, like, it would be kind of funny if he didn't really mean anything about the law to give Pompey the authority for the pirates. He just totally used it as a tactic to root out Ashur's loyalties. But then it gained enough momentum where he was like, okay, like everyone's like, patting him on the back, like, dude, fantastic idea. But he actually didn't mean it to be anything in the first place. But this could be a catalyst towards that happening no matter what. All right. So we have, I think, what is going to be our last kind of bucket that might devolve into more than one conversation. But I feel like we have to talk about the celebrations that happened in the aftermath of this back at the villa before we talk about the Caesar and maybe the implications of that, only because iconic lines being dropped by Ashur here, just him coming back to the villa, having gotten what he's been dying for these past 3.5 episodes, and just him walking in and just saying, like, I would bathe hard-fought wound in a river of fucking wine. Like, the way that he delivers so many of these lines is just so good. I was getting so pumped up at this.
Yeah, he was so good. So good. And, obviously he's going around telling the good news left and right. I think he addresses the gladiators at one point, which they all start cheering, and even Achilles, cheering too. So she's definitely on that champion, love House of Ashur mindset. And then we get to Ashur talking to Chorus saying, well, now you don't have to worry about, lending Opiter, your, what does he say? Bending Opiter's ear with your, whatever. You know what I'm talking about.
Cock.
Yeah.
I was going to say, are you trying not to say that?
Yeah, so you don't have to seduce the bitch anymore. And his immediate reaction was like, oh, thank God, I hated doing that in the first place. But this is potentially the biggest heartbreak in the show, because what does Chorus do now? He's stuck between, do I follow my career or do I go for love in the classic sitcom way? A little bit different now, a little bit more extreme circumstances, but this could really, really, really lead to heartbreak if Chorus either needs to, break it off with Opiter. Opiter says, it was all a ploy. I never really cared about you. Just heartbreak for Chorus. Or if he needs to cut it off and stays loyal to Ashur, that's still heartbreaking. So I don't know.
Yeah, our boy has the fifis, as they say. He has definitely caught a little bit of feelings for Opiter, which he did not anticipate, but it don't matter. Talk to Messi about proclaiming your love for someone, it might not work out the way you want it to. So maybe Dottori continues to play that close to the chest. Another thing that happens right on the back of that, or I might even happen before that, I believe this is the first time that Hilara is introduced to Viridia as a concept, let's say.
Oh, I clocked it.
Yeah.
She didn't like it. She didn't like it.
Yeah, we knew that was coming from episode 1, though.
Yeah,
that's been written on the wall. It's just a matter of time. So yeah, I mean, I think we talked both of those conversations through. Just prediction wise, I'll put it on the board. I am fully predicting now that Opiter and Chorus are going to have a happily ever after at the end of the season.
I like that from you.
I don't know what that means with his connection to Ashur, but that's the guess.
I feel like if that happens, then everyone else is going to die. No one else's romantic relationships will work out. Like we probably get 1 and maybe 2 of those. So if that happens, then everyone else is pretty much fucked.
Yeah.
I would love that.
The way that the math works in this show. Okay, I think we can, move. So I just was so, Ashur's just, he's hyping up Hilara, he's hyping up Dottori. Like Paul mentioned, he gets it on the balcony and he's saying, let our patron Crassus, let him stand in awe at the fearsome offering of the house of fucking Ashur. And the way he does it, and he just, I don't know. Nick Tarby was so unbelievable with these line reads. I might just go back and watch that last 10 minutes after we get off of this just to experience it again. But we get the answer to Crassus's maybe mysterious kind of messages where there's not a ton of detail in them, and that we get Gaius Julius Caesar instead of Marcus Crassus. Elephant in the room, obviously a different actor than what went down in the original series, but Caesar was one of my favorite parts of the original series, so I am really looking forward to what he brings to the show. This will be the first time I think I've ever said this on the podcast before. I'm noticing the wig. And it doesn't look that great, but that's fine because I think that him as a character is going to be enough to overcome that.
Don't some of the characters purposely wear wigs in world though? At some times,
Lucretia did.
It's just Lucretia. Okay, so maybe I was thinking.
I don't know if the guys are doing that.
Yeah, like the George Washington hair, like I thought there was some people doing some of that, but maybe not. Yeah, I mean, I feel like now that you're pointing it out, I do remember it looking a little weird when he pops out. But I'm very excited that he's there. It's just such a powerful name that just makes you want to click play on the next episode because we want to see how he's not gonna treat Ashur well. He's probably gonna keep belittling him. It's just gonna be pure entertainment because Ashur is gonna not stand for that, obviously. So, and there's no time for that bullshit. So he's gonna have to put him back in his place, and that's just gonna be a fun back and forth.
It's also going to be interesting because Caesar, if he's even somewhat similar, he's going to walk in and be like, dude, this place sucks, man. Where's the wine? Where are the chicks? What are we doing here? And this could be an interesting avenue towards the House of Ashur almost rivaling the House of Opiter as the kind of purveyor of taboo things, and this is where we party, and this is where the ladies get the Southern Lord's kisses, and the guys get to go to the dark corners of the villa and do what they do. I just feel like he could be a very interesting engine for that, and he's gonna want to do that, and why not just do it in the comfort of Ashur's villa versus going anywhere else?
Yeah, everything was so on the up and up for Ashur this entire episode up until this point where it's like, okay, is this going to be like a slap in the face, like go back to reality? You're not as high up as you think you are, Ashur. Like a lot of things could happen here. The one scenario that came to mind, say Caesar just wants to big dog Ashur. Say Caesar wants to bed Hilara. What would Ashur do? Is just Ashur bite his lip and say, sure, have at it? Or does he live into his emotions? There's a million different things that could happen. But if that happens, I don't know what Ashur would do.
I think there's a 75% chance that Caesar tries to bang Hilara.
Definitely. Okay.
I don't think Ashur's going to have an issue with it. I think he's focused on Viridia now.
Yeah. And do you think then, I mean, that in itself would be interesting to see how Hilara responds to that. He can't really protect her. I guess he both can and can't. Like you're saying, it'll be that is also, I think, a great way to establish the hierarchy, almost from the get. of, where do these two, Ashur and Caesar, kind of stand in relation to each other. And yeah, we'll see. I mean, Messi is probably going to feel some type of way about that too, where it's like, yo, bro, I could take Ashur, but who's the new guy? Like, what's going on there?
I think that does it,
All right.
right? We have 2 segments left that we're going to do, and this is going to be the first time we're doing a new segment, and then we're going to end the episode as we always do with BKM, Bang Kill Marry. So this new segment that I think we're going to do it for the rest of this podcast coverage, I'm calling it Plant Your Death Flag. What it is there's 3 different rules. We have the first rule being that you're going to plant your death flag and predict the death of a character, but only specifically in next episode. That's all this prediction is. Who you think is going to die in episode 5. That's the first rule. The second rule is I'll keep track of it, but you're never allowed to pick the same character in back-to-back weeks. As long as there's a week in between, you're good to pick them again. So be careful about not trying to predict the character's death too early when it could be obvious that they're dying down the way. And then the third rule is we're going to flip the ordering every single week of who goes first, second, and third, and I will be going first for this one since I keep it solo up. Yeah. So with that being said, my choice for who will be dying next episode is going to be Tarkon. I think that we're going to get the games, and we're going to start the episode with Ashur picking who's going to actually be fighting for the house. And of course, Achilles is going to be the headline for this all. But I do think that Calidus is going to not be chosen as the Dominus. It's the new bloods, the one that want to come in and prove everything. And I think Tarkon will be selected, and I think he's going to actually lose before the Primus or whatever the version of the Primus that we're getting for Achilles. So that's going to be my first guess, is that Tarkon does not make it out of episode 5. So Kyle, I have you written down as second actually for this one.
Okay. I was thinking I was gonna say Erato before you, and I feel like that might be an episode too early. So I'm gonna go backtrack on that, and I'm gonna take the darker skinned slave girl that was cleaning the leaves out of the pool in the house of Ashur. I just feel like Caesar's going to come in and they're going to wreak havoc. It's going to be one crazy night, like one bender ass night. And some poor slave is going to be the kind of collateral of what they're doing. And someone's not going to make it out of that.
Okay. And Paul?
Oh man. The dying next episode part's really getting me. But I think I'm going to do. See, I want to say Arato so badly too, but I don't think he'll get picked for the games. And assuming games are next episode, which I don't know, that might be jumping early. I'm going to go with, what is his name? Ephesius? Mm-hmm. It is the one gladiator
that was with
who attacked
at the end of episode.
Yes, attacked Achilles, and also one of the 3 that is fighting against Achilles now. He seems to be, his name's brought up a decent amount, and I think he would be enough to just make it into the games, but not promising enough to survive. So I'm going to say he's on the on deck to die.
Okay. And now that we have our selections in, let me just say that the name of the next episode is called The Goddess of Death. So to me, that's like the bringer of rain. Yes. Like that is the episode where she wins in the arena. So to me, I am fully anticipating the arena.
You should have said Arato.
All I know is the name of the next episode. Maybe that just means we're going to get a full. Maybe that means we'll get a full flashback of what happened to her hand too, and it could just be about that.
Okay.
So I could be completely wrong.
We should have known too. Episode 5 obviously has, that is the Theocles episode in season 1. So we should have known, maybe. I'm sticking with it. I don't mind. Okay. Because worst case scenario there is I'm wrong and we get the games in the next episode, and you won't see me shedding a tear about that. We'll get into the last part of what we're going to do here today is our Bang Kill Marry. So we're going to end it here with the BKM. It is my turn to present it to the 2 of you. I'm not sure who will end up going first. How about Paul will go first because Luke went first.
What we'll do is reverse order of what we do for the death flag.
That works for me. And I went with a theme of the grizzled vets. So we've got Chorus, we've got Calidus, and we've got Ashur.
You said the first 2. I was like, I don't care who the third name is. I'm killing them. But Oh
Mm.
man, that's tough. All right. Because I know who Asher is and what happened in the other dark fantasy world where, he actually died. I know he's a schemer. I know he's betrayed a bunch of people. Can't trust his ass. I'm going to kill Asher, main character of our show. That's fucking wild. And then, ugh, I don't know, man. This is so tough. This is crazy tough. But I think I'm going to marry. Dude, I don't know. Chorus. I'm flipping a coin at this point. Chorus. Because he's a beast. They're both beasts. They're both handsome. They both make me feel safe. I don't know. I'm gonna marry Chorus and bang Calidus. How about that?
I think I'm actually going to have the same answer, and I think really the difference between Chorus and Calidus for me, bang Calidus would be a great time, but he is a gladiator, and I don't think my little heart could take that of that's my husband. Okay. Of course, is a free man who kind of has survived those things. So he's kind of put the more, although he literally almost just died last episode, but we'll just say he put the more dangerous part of his life behind him. And I think that is literally going to be the difference.
It's a great answer.
I mean, I'm going to flip Chorus and Calidus. I'm still killing Asher, but I'm going to marry Calidus because I live in a world of practicality, and Chorus is way too old. That's the only reason. If you took 20 years off Chorus, he's the easy choice for me. I feel like he's the lover. But just how it is, I have no issue marrying Calidus. I think he's a great fatherly figure. We'll raise a great family, and we'll have somebody better than Tarkon because he clearly needs his head screwed on a little bit better.
Yeah, man. He learned all the wrong lessons from his dad. It seems to be kind of what was the theme almost of that bath scene. I didn't mention it there, but this is the perfect thing to do it before I play us out with the boring old housekeeping at the end, is that they've done an interesting job of showing us like Calidus has a crazy capacity for like anger and rage. Like we've seen him fly off the handle like twice in the past 2 episodes, not like to the point where he's like destructive, but he gets like super pissed and he like screams. And I love that. And B, I think maybe has a slight explanation of like why Tarkon is the way he is too. He just hasn't been able to maybe get in control of that the way that Calidus has in his older age. And that's what's also frustrating for Calidus, is where he kind of sees himself in him, but it's like, just listen to me. Like I've lived the thing that you're going through and just trust that I know what I'm talking about. And Tarkon refuses, which makes it even more frustrating. All right. That is episode 4, Blood and Bone. Fantastic episode. I feel like this is, like I said at the top, like going to be a turning point for this season where it's just going to be nothing but the hits. After this, I'm so excited for episode 5, and we'll be here. We're going to be here every week. Once a week. We're hoping to get these episodes out on Fridays now moving forward, which hopefully is just a lot better for everyone else as well. And as I mentioned at the top, the best way to support us is going to be liking and subscribing on whatever you are listening or watching on. And the best way to join the conversation is going to be joining that Discord, Bingetown TV. I believe it's discord.com/Bingetown TV. You can also go to bingetowntv.com/podcast. And then that gets you to a nice page where it just has access to everything related to Bingetown TV. So it's going to be easy access to the Binge Empire feed, which obviously you've found in some way, but also it'll give you easy access to the Discord. And then other parts that are important, it gives you easy access to the other feeds that are under the Bingetown TV umbrella. So this is the Binge Empire feed, which we're covering Spartacus. We just finished up Welcome to DERRY. We're doing Fallout. Game of Thrones shows will be coming on here. Industry, HBO type things are all going to be on Binge Empire. We also have the Core, which is where we cover everything on Apple TV. These two that are joining me here, Paul and Luke, alongside our fearless leader, Jimmy, are covering Pluribus over on the Core. And that's just a great other feed for you to follow if you've been enjoying the coverage here. And then also Unreal. I'm going to plug it because I'm on it. Unreal is where we cover reality television, Survivor, and then a big one we do is The Traitors. I'm mentioning it right now because Traitors is coming back on Peacock, and January 8th, I believe, is a Thursday. So we're going to be covering that over on the Unreal feed. We do a lot here. we try to cover as many shows as possible. So there's lots of feeds, there's lots of shows, there's lots of hosts, there's lots of coverage. And if you enjoy TV and you enjoy talking to people about TV, stick with us. Check us out, bingetowntv.com/podcast. Join the Discord. Keep following, keep liking, keep subscribing, keep enjoying. And we'll keep being here, covering all the shows that you love. We want to thank you all for listening, and we will see you next week.
Dominus.